April 15th, 2020. That's the day that the iPhone SE 2 came out, but it's also the day that changed the culture of leaking. Hi, I'm Jon Prosser, and I ruined Apple leaks.
This is Jon Prosser, and if you're not entirely familiar with who he is a part-time FPT host, part-time Genius Bar podcast host, part-time Apple leaker, and a full-time professional asshole. What? That's what his Twitter bio used to say a few years ago. But when you put this whole combination of part-time and full-time jobs together, to sum up what he primarily does is he's a tech analyst on the internet, just like me, myself actually, but a little bit more of an asshole. But over the past how many years of him just analyzing the news and speculating and doing all of his reporting on Front Page Tech, his YouTube channel, he got a little bored and tired of all of that, as kind of a lot of us tech YouTube creators these days. And instead of wanting to report on the news, he then decided he wanted to be the news. And he certainly did that in 2020. You guys remember the whole SE incident about how it was Jon Prosser, a stupid YouTuber who has no idea what the heck he's talking about, making jokes for a living, versus mainstream tech analyst media. Yeah, that whole saga. And pretty much after that whole thing, that solidified his credibility as a leaker within the community. He's gone to leak a few things ever since then, aside from the SE. A lot of them very much correct. But for the things that he did happen to get wrong, you may or may not recall this video on the internet.
Okay, me. All right. I did promise that if you did not get an Apple event on March 23rd, that's today, that I would shave off my eyebrows.
Oh my God!
Is it bad? Babe, is it bad? Should I go over it again? Can you tell it's gone? Is it bad? Is it bad? Oh my God, oh God, I just saw myself. Oh, no!
Yep. That's the same Jon Prosser we're talking about today. But instead of talking about him getting things wrong when it comes to his leaks, this time we got a bit of an interesting doozy to talk about here. And this is in regards to all of the iOS 19/iOS 26 leaks. I follow him, I've watched what he's reported, and during the first part of January, when he initially started this whole leak train of showcasing us iOS 19, I was kind of inclined to believe him given his track record and transparency on how exactly he gets his information and reports it. That's gonna come back later. And sure enough, lo and behold, WWDC, Apple unveiled iOS 26. And while no, John's renders weren't a 100% match to what Apple had released, well, they were actually pretty darn close. In fact, there weren't that many inaccuracies between the two. And because of this insane accuracy on this first time ever major software leak like this, Apple obviously didn't really play this cool. In fact, Apple has a history of not playing cool when it comes to leaks getting out. Now, hey, I get it. I work for a private company and there are trade secrets and various other NDAs that I cannot discuss as an employee of that company. I just can't. And Apple has the same right to say, no, you are not allowed to discuss these things. You are not allowed to give away our trade secrets, and you are not allowed to share what it is we're developing. And they have every right to do that as a private, well, okay, technically they're a public company, but still, they have the right to do that as a business. Well, some people don't always follow that to a T, and that's how we get these leaks, and that's how we get this information as to what the heck is going on inside of Apple. Well, I kind of know what's going on inside of Apple without the leaks and all that. I can just take a look at the products and their press announcements, and that's all I need to know, that there's just a complete dumpster fire going on inside the company right now. But still, Apple is exercising their right to keep their secrecy to a point where, well, now it's getting a little questionable, if I'm being honest. If you hadn't figured out what it is I'm hinting or leading up to, it's the whole Apple suing Jon Prosser over the iOS 26 leaks. That's that simple. And let's just say, I think that this is going to get real interesting, not necessarily in Apple's favor, but genuinely, I think Jon is going to come out the luckier end of this lawsuit. And here's why. On Thursday, July 17th, 2025, Eric Slivka, I think that's how you pronounce it, published a report on Mac Rumors reporting that, yes, Apple has sued Jon Prosser. Let me read the exact report for you guys. Earlier this year, YouTuber Jon Prosser shared multiple videos showing off what he claimed to be recreated renderings of what was then presumed to be called iOS 19 and which was eventually unveiled by Apple as iOS 26 at WWDC in June. In his first video back in January, Prosser showed off a camera app redesign with a simpler set of buttons for moving between photo and video modes. And he followed that up with a March episode of his Genius Bar podcast where he showed off the Messages app, complete with round navigation buttons at the top with rounded corners around the keyboard. And he wrapped things up with an April video that gave a more complete look at the Liquid Glass redesign that ultimately debuted in iOS 26 with rounder glass-like interface elements, hill-shaped tab bars at the bottom of certain Apple apps, and more. While the camera app redesign didn't exactly match what Apple unveiled for iOS 26, the general idea was correct, and much of what else Prosser showed was pretty close to spot on. And Apple clearly took notice as the company filed a lawsuit today, well, I guess as of Thursday, July 17th, against Prosser and Michael Ramaciotti? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I'm not good at pronouncing names, okay? For misappropriation of trade secrets. Apple's complaint outlines what it claims is a series of events that led to the leaks, which centered around a development iPhone in the possession of said contact's friend and Apple employee Ethan Lipnick. According to Apple, Prosser and his contact, I'm just going to say that because I cannot pronounce this name, I'm sorry. According to Apple, Prosser and his contact plotted to access Lipnick's phone, acquiring his passcode, and then using location tracking to determine when he would be gone for an extended period. Prosser reportedly offered financial compensation to his contact in return for assisting with accessing the development iPhone. Apple says his contact accessed Lipnick's development iPhone and made a FaceTime call to Prosser showing off iOS 26 running on the development iPhone, and that Prosser recorded the call with screen capture tools. Prosser then shared those videos with others and used them to make recreated renders of iOS 26 for his videos. Lipnick's phone contained a significant amount of additional Apple trade secret information that has not yet been publicly disclosed, and Apple says it does not know how much of that information is in the possession of Prosser and his contact. In order to protect its trade secrets, Apple has filed a lawsuit to request an injunction against further disclosure of Apple's confidential trade secret information and is seeking damages over misappropriation of them. Lipnick's employment with Apple has already been terminated over his failure to follow the company's policies to protect development and unreleased devices and software. Lipnick also failed to disclose the breach to Apple once he learned of it through others who recognized his apartment in the recorded FaceTime call, with Apple learning of the details from an anonymous email. An anonymous email. I don't know why, but I have a feeling it's sabotage by Jon's contact. Again, my commentary is a bit early right now. So this is the alleged lawsuit that Apple is filing against Prosser, and my goodness, is it a damning one if this happens to be true. But, and this is a big but, this is based off of a lot of assumptions, and despite that, Jon for the most part has kind of gone silent as he hasn't uploaded anything to FPT, and to my surprise, Genius Bar actually missed a week. Yeah, Genius Bar typically doesn't like to miss out on their weekly shows, and I haven't seen anything from Genius Bar in a while. I think this is why. While yes, during lawsuit filings people often go silent as it is recommended you try not to share anything or get involved with the public or something, I don't know the exact specific reasoning behind the advantages of going silent to the community during a lawsuit, but nonetheless, Jon has at least given us this one message after this whole thing was going on about the internet, and after this I have a feeling he's going to be silent until the lawsuit is over. So, according to Jon's Twitter, here's what he has to say. For the record, this is not how the situation played out on my end. Luckily, I have receipts for that. I did not, quote unquote, plot taught to access anyone's phone. I did not have any passwords. I was unaware of how the information was obtained. Looking forward to speaking with Apple on this. That line there is interesting. He says, looking forward to speaking with Apple on this, which means I think he's got a lot of confidence about how innocent he is on this end. But nonetheless, he did actually provide a screenshot, which I'm not entirely sure exactly how this helps him, as there's a lot of context that is missing in the screenshot, but I'll share this in post. Nonetheless, yeah, this is a big situation. However, when I saw this article and discovered the lawsuit, I was kind of reminded of something that happened about 4 years ago. And so I went back through YouTube history, which is not particularly easy after all of the years of Jon uploading videos to FPT, but I found the video that this whole lawsuit reminded me of. And I have to say, considering what Jon had to say in this video 4 years ago, this is gonna get real interesting. Oh, how fitting. A storm is actually rolling in. Basically, I wanted to touch on the fact that, yes, this is not the first time Apple's actually tried to go after Jon. This is actually their second. But the thing is, they've always had a bit of a problem with that, and they never really could go after Jon specifically, because here in the US, we actually have a bunch of protections for the media for this type of activity, so long as various criteria is met. And Jon would eventually later go on to explain what said criteria is and explain what he does to meet it. And the reason why I say this isn't the first time they've gone after Jon is because ultimately it's Jon's name on the leak, but because they couldn't go after him specifically, they tried to go after team members who assisted him that don't happen to live in the US and therefore don't exactly have the same protections that we have in the US. And so long as you didn't obtain this information illegally, and in order to not obtain the information illegally, the information was just given to him. He never reached out or demanded or even offered payment towards any of these Apple employees. In fact, let me cut to this line in the video right here.
This is not the first time. There have been rumors of me paying sources going around for a long time. People have made fake accounts that somehow made it to the top of Reddit threads and in news articles claiming to be a former source of mine and saying that I paid them. Of course, as the news articles have said, I have publicly denied this. So fine, I'll go ahead and say it here. No, Evan, though you're publicly making claims that Jon Prosser must pay sources, no. I've never paid a source, no money has ever exchanged hands, no transactions have happened, and I've always made clear to employees that they are under no pressure to give me information.
See, this is the reason why I think Jon's not gonna come out of this lawsuit shorthanded. It's primarily this right there. The big allegation is that he is prying and paying people to solicit this information so he can make his leak videos. Except, while it's not Apple specifically giving these allegations this time, last time it was just the rest of the community online. I mean, be it Evan Blass from Twitter or who else was at the time criticizing him for quote-unquote paying for the information. Jon's never done that, and that screenshot right there proves he is aware that yes, you cannot pay, otherwise he is illegally obtaining this information, and if that were the case, then he could be easily prosecuted by Apple. That's the big key takeaway here that I think is important, that I think a lot of people have completely forgotten about. This isn't Jon's first rodeo. This isn't the first time he's actually been accused of paying sources or prying for information like that. This ain't his first rodeo. And I highly doubt his policies or his morals on this have changed in the past 4 years. This is a 4-year-old video. I highly doubt anything has changed on his end. So if any malice has gone on, which as far as I can tell appears to mostly be between his contact at Apple and Mr. Lipnick, that's where the majority of the turmoil seems to be going on, because knowing how Jon handles business with leakers, and I assume he hasn't really changed all that much, I think Jon's gonna come out of this pretty clean. Wow, it is pouring out there. Jeez. But of course, It's been 4 years. While I personally don't think Jon's changed his policies that much, who knows? Maybe the lawsuit might prove otherwise. Or maybe laws regarding freedom of speech might have slightly changed since then. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. But I know that as of right now, Apple's in a really tough pickle. Their software right now is currently in the toilet when it comes to reliability, and I am 100% confident saying this. They've legit ruined my experience with my iPhone XS Max through software. They've had their massive blunder with Apple Intelligence. Yeah, it's not doing good. And yeah, on top of that, the whole iOS 26, they've never had a software leak this big leak from the company. This is new to them, and I can understand why they'd be upset. But there's a lot of turmoil going on in Apple right now, and trying to get Jon involved in this, I actually don't think is going to help them. I think that Apple is just making it even worse for themselves. That's my thoughts on the matter. I gotta wrap up this video before the power goes out. So thank you for watching. Do me a favor and interact with the stuff below. Do me a favor and check out my Patreon page. Also, yes, I know I said that I'm taking a break, but just to let you guys know, if I find something that I'm passionate enough about that I want to talk about and have the free time to do it, that's when I'll make some videos. Without further ado, this is the Random Mouth Gadgets, signing out.